you still have to keep going. You're not done. Because see, when most people get to the point of thinking, thinking that they think that they're losing their sanity, then they get afraid and say, oh, okay, I better stop, and just go back and watch some TV and just do what normal people do. But you failed. Philosophy requires very deep courage. It's the courage of truth-seeking. If truth leads you to insanity, a true philosopher will choose to become insane. Because that's the truth. So you have to get very clear as to what your priorities are. And if anything is a higher priority for you than truth, then you're going to fail at philosophy. And that's exactly what happens to most philosophers, including the academic ones, the scientific ones, the professional ones. And the last trap of philosophy that I'll mention here is political activism and power games. Philosophy is not about achieving some political goals, like ushering in a Marxist revolution, or power games like your party winning the presidency or something like that, or you having power in your university. This is not serious philosophy. Because as soon as you start to care about winning these power games, what happens is you have to stop caring about truth. Power becomes a higher priority than truth. And as soon as this happens, you've sold your soul to the devil. Because remember, philosophy is about pure understanding. We don't really care where the understanding leads us to. We don't care what the consequences of the understanding are. And the reason we don't care about that is because we don't even know what the consequences will be. We don't know what the consequences of finding the ultimate truth will be, assuming there even is such a thing. But let's just assume there is. What are the consequences? Will it make you happy? Will it make you suicidal? We don't know. But a real philosopher will say, I want the truth anyways, even if it's going to make me suicidal. Why? Because a true philosopher cares about understanding for its own sake. Damn the costs. If you're not comfortable with that, then you shouldn't be doing philosophy. Now you might say, well, Leo, aren't these just your biased ideas of what philosophy should be? After all, who made you the king of philosophy? Why don't you teach philosophy in a more neutral way? The way that a university professor might. You see, a university professor is not going to be as forceful with you as I am here. That might make it seem as though I'm kind of biased. And in a sense, I am biased. You know what I'm biased towards? I'm biased towards truth. I'm forceful because if I'm not forceful with you, then you're gonna engage in bullshit. And bullshit is the obstacle to truth. So we have to be very ruthless in cutting out the bullshit. So yeah, my style of philosophy is extremely ruthless about bullshit. As incredible as this sounds, philosophy has a tangible endpoint. There are right and wrong ways of doing philosophy. And here's what the endpoint is. The endpoint is this. It's possible to understand yourself and reality completely. Completely. Imagine this. Open your mind to this possibility. Now, maybe I'm wrong. You don't know if I'm right yet, and I'm not asking you to just to believe me blindly. This is something you have to prove to yourself by doing it. But just open your mind to the possibility that you can do so much philosophy so deeply if you do it in the right way that eventually you will come to complete understanding of yourself and reality. Now, either that's possible or it's not. The problem is you don't know which. The only way you could know is by trying it, seeing if you can do it. In the same way that you don't know how high you can jump until you try jumping. So don't just dismiss this possibility right off the bat without trying it. You have to try it, and you have to try it seriously. That's how science works. Science requires serious experimentation. You can't just do a half-ass experiment. You have to do a genuine, honest experiment, you know, with your full effort and see if it pans out and works. I'm sweating a bit under this mask. Okay. So my claim is that if you do philosophy correctly, you will answer every existential question that you have about reality. And you will understand why everything exists precisely as it exists. This is possible to answer. But the answer is so profound that it cannot be put easily into words. Although I've done so in other episodes. But you are correct in your skepticism in that, see, the reason you're skeptical about this, and you might think that what I'm saying here is impossible, fantastic, exaggerated, or delusional, is because you just don't know anybody in real life who has achieved this. In fact, you don't know almost of a single philosopher in Western philosophy who has achieved this, or who even claims this is possible. Usually, philosophers play this game of humility where they just try to act like, oh, well, there's so much stuff in the world, it's so complicated, we can't know it. We can't possibly know it. This is false humility of people who don't know what they're talking about. Any philosopher who tells you that this is impossible is just simply full of shit. And the reason that is because it's not that they're lying, it's just that they don't know how to do proper philosophy. Because philosophy is so tricky and complicated that almost nobody has succeeded in doing it properly. In fact, this is so common that it's gotten so bad to the point where if you tell people there is a proper way to do philosophy, they will argue with you about this. And they'll say, no, Leo, there isn't. It's all just subjective and relative, and these are just all your biases, and you're just delusional. Well, that's one possibility. But the other possibility is that it's actually possible, but you have to be very strict about your doing of philosophy. You can't just take it willy-nilly and do it any which way you want. Now I want to introduce the notion of what I call pure philosophy. I'm trademarking this, pure philosophy, capital P, capital P, pure, capital philosophy. What do I mean by pure philosophy? It's philosophy that's completely free of history and named individuals, which makes it very different from academic philosophy and the history of philosophy. We don't care about Plato or Aristotle or Descartes or David Hume or Jacques Derrida or anybody. We also don't care about history. We don't care about who said what. What did they really mean? Did Plato really mean this, or did they mean this? And when was this said? And, you know, how did these ideas develop historically? We don't care. In pure philosophy, all we care about is the ideas themselves. Pure philosophy is an impersonal collection of ideas and concepts. Think of it as a spreadsheet of every possible idea and concept you could have about reality. Every perspective, every way to understand it. In pure philosophy, we then evaluate all these concepts and ideas based on their merit. We edit them freely, we reinterpret them, and we blend them together to create the best possible understanding of reality. We don't care who said what. We don't care if we're interpreting Descartes correctly or not. We don't care about arguing about this philosopher versus that philosopher and so forth. We don't care about East or West. We just care about understanding reality as best as we can. And we're going to use whatever ideas invented by whomever to do this. In pure philosophy, there is no debating, there is no arguing, there is no proving, there is no debunking, and there is no ideology. This is done purely for your own understanding. As long as you understand reality correctly, that's it. We're not trying to prove it to anybody else. We're not trying to discredit anybody else. We're not trying to invent an ideology. We're not trying to write a book. We're not trying to write a research paper that gets approved by somebody. We're not interested in convincing the whole world that we're right and that they're wrong. We're not interested in being the best. We're interested simply in pure understanding of reality. And in this pursuit, we are willing to question absolutely every single assumption that mankind makes about everything it knows. Everything. We will question everything. Nothing is sacred. We will even question whether your mother is actually your mother. Everything will be questioned. We will even question 1 + 1 = 2. We will even question A = A. We'll question everything. We're willing to burn everything down to the ground. And we do all this outside of any institution or bureaucracy, not in a university, not as part of some school, not as part of some group, not as part of some collective project. It's just personally you understanding reality, just pure philosophy. In pure philosophy, nothing is ever taken for granted. Everything is questioned. We even question why water is wet. In pure philosophy, everything must be explained from scratch without any appeals to authority, history, status, cultural norms, or even morality. We will even question, is rape bad? We will question that. That's not taken for granted that rape is bad. We have to derive whether it is or not. And maybe it isn't. We're open to that. With pure philosophy, we have infinite open-mindedness. We're open to absolutely anything, and we don't care about the consequences of